You're watching Reality Check. Tonight, making sense of Mamata Banerjee's stunning victory in West Bengal. A win so big that it caught almost everyone, from pollsters to political observers, off guard. Just look at these final numbers now. The Trinamool Congress settling at 213 seats, up from last time, and the BJP finally at 77. In fact, the TMC's vote share actually rose. It rose from 45% in 2016, we put those figures up on the screen for you, to 48%. So a 3 percentage point jump in the TMC's vote share. That's really a huge jump, frankly, for any party, especially, as I mentioned, a third term for the Chief Minister is quite remarkable. Is quite remarkable, in fact, a third term for a Chief Minister. Now, very few, frankly, those watching from a distance saw this coming. In fact, by the end, the BJP's high decibel campaign, spearheaded by the BJP's big two, Mr. Modi and Mr. Amit Shah, had convinced more than a few observers that Mamata Banerjee might actually lose. But now that the dust has settled, it's worth asking whether, if one cut through the perception of a massive BJP surge, was the party a serious contender at all? One of the reasons why so many have felt persuaded of a BJP win was that it had done extraordinarily well in the Lok Sabha elections, winning 18 seats, the equivalent of 120 assembly seats. But what that assumption misses is that the BJP was actually up against its own track record, where it has faltered in replicating its massive Modi-powered Lok Sabha wins in the states. Analysis done by Pranoy Roy in our election desk in December last year had actually pointed this out, that the Bengal outcome we're seeing today may be a result of the BJP's Lok Sabha versus Vidhan Sabha problem. The BJP regularly underperforms in assembly elections versus the Lok Sabha. In 10 state elections before and after the 2019 Lok Sabha, the BJP has actually seen a 13 to 17% negative swing away from how it's done in the Lok Sabha. Let's just put up on the screen for you some of the examples of that. So there on the screen for you, you have the states which went to polls before the 2019 Lok Sabha. And you can see that everywhere the BJP actually doesn't do very well. In fact, now that the results are in, if one looks at the phase-wise data of this eternal 8-phase election, it suggests that the Trinamool Congress was actually always comfortably ahead, contrary to the narrative that the BJP had got off to a roaring start, powered by a high-profile campaign in Nandigram in the second phase. Let's just look at that. In the first phase, which was largely south to southwest Bengal of the 30 seats, the TMC was not ahead, actually won 18 of those seats, and the BJP only 12. In the second phase, again 30 seats, again broadly the same region, south and southwest Bengal. This included Nandigram. The TMC actually won close to 20 seats, the BJP 11. By the third phase, 31 seats, this is the sort of greater Kolkata region, Howrah, Hooghly and so on. The TMC swept this phase, winning 27 seats, the BJP just 4 seats. Fourth phase, 44 seats, Greater Kolkata and North Bengal region, TMC at 31, the BJP at 12. In between these phases were the Sitalkuchi killings, where central forces fired on 4 Trinamool workers from the minority community in North Bengal, which, as we'll see, could have become an important turning point. By the fifth phase, 45 seats, Central and North Bengal, the TMC at 27, the BJP did well in this phase 17. But look at what happens after that. Phase 6, 43 seats, Central and North Bengal, TMC virtually sweeps 35 to 8. Phase 7, 34 seats. This is again North Central Bengal. This is the Muslim belt and Kolkata. Again a TMC sweep, 25 to 9. And the last phase, 35 seats, again North Central Bengal and Kolkata. The TMC continued to sweep 31 to 4. Now, this is not to say that Mamata Banerjee did not face a major challenge, but she appeared to have held her ground and more for a number of factors. The one cited most often can be called the 4 M's barring her win, and that is Mamata, Mahila, which is women, Muslims, and money transfers. Number 1, the obvious, Mamata Banerjee. Multiple polls have found that the approval for her performance and her popularity remained high despite local anger. Number 2, Mahila. Did women voters back quote-unquote Bengal's daughter as she had positioned herself again? Women's turnout has always been higher than male turnout since 2011 in West Bengal when Mamata came to power, just like we're seeing in many other states. A CSDS Lokniti post poll in 2016 elections found that 48% women actually favored her versus 42% men. She seems to recognize this. She has given 17% seats to women candidates, the highest of all parties. And in the Lok Sabha election, remember, she gave 41% of tickets to women candidates. The TMC government also highlights its multiple women-centric schemes. The number 3 M factor, Muslims. Muslims, as we know, make up a third of Bengal's population, the second highest in India. Since the collapse of the left, Muslims have largely migrated to the TMC, though some have continued to vote for the Congress. This time, the TMC has swept the traditional Congress Muslim belt stronghold districts of Malda, Murshidabad and North Dinajpur, winning 55 of the 67 seats that went to polls in the region, a gain of 30 seats. The Congress had won 28 seats here last time, dropping to 0 this time. Also, the Indian Secular Front, founded by a Muslim cleric, had not really taken off. It failed to split the Muslim vote. And the other question is whether the killings of 4 Muslim TMC supporters by central forces in Sitalkuchi in North Bengal further consolidate the Muslim vote behind the TMC. The other M factor, money transfers. Is Mamata building a kind of money transfer state? A number of cash transfer schemes like we're seeing in other parts of India. Kanya Shri scheme, cash transfer of 25,000 rupees to teenage schoolgirls aimed at preventing child marriage. Rupashri scheme, cash transfer of 25,000 rupees to women in poor families if an underage marriage does not take place. Schemes like Krishak Bandhu, cash transfer of rupees 6,000 to farmers, modelled on the PM Kisan of the centre. And of course, all of this consolidated around what was called the Dware Sarkar. The Sarkar comes to your dwar or doorstep delivery of 11 welfare schemes, which was launched in December last year to counter worries over localized corruption in the implementation of schemes. All right, joining us tonight to further unpack this fascinating outcome, we have with us Sanjay Kumar, psephologist and professor, CSDS, is with us. Nilanjan Sarkar, senior visiting fellow, CPR, Center for Policy Research, assistant professor at Ashoka University. Chandra Kumar Bose, former vice president and senior leader of the BJP West Bengal, and Debangshu Bhattacharya Dev, state spokesperson of the TMC and also the general secretary of its youth wing. Thank you all so much for joining us. Let me just start with you first, Sanjay Kumar, because you actually have in your hands perhaps the most credible set of information about how these polls have panned out, because CSDS Lokniti has always done a post poll. What really stood out to you in terms of what some of the factors were barring Mamata Banerjee's win, and whether at all there was in fact a serious threat to the BJP? As I said, was it just largely perception, or was there in fact a threat that she managed to stave off?
No, I think it was largely the perception. But if you want me to narrate the factors which helped in Mamata Banerjee's victory,
yes,
I think, Srinivasan, you have already stated all the facts which contributed to Mamata Banerjee's victory. I can only give numbers to the statements which you have given.
Yes.
Yes, a huge amount of Muslim vote in favor of Mamata Banerjee. Yes, to the extent of between say 75 to 77%. So this election witnessed a huge consolidation of Muslim vote in favor of TMC, but only a consolidation of Muslim vote could not have given Mamata Banerjee the kind of victory she managed to achieve.
Right.
You talked about the other M, which is the Mahila. Yes, if you bifurcate the Mahila vote in terms of various caste community, if you look at any caste community, any section, and look at the vote of that section among the men and women for TMC, you see the difference. So just to give you an example,
yes,
so among the Brahmins, if the men Brahmins voted for TMC in the range of 35%, so among the women Brahmin, it was 40%. So among every single community, the difference in men and women was to the extent of 4 to 5 to 6%.
Right.
That's a huge amount of shift in favor of, or that's a huge, that this kind of an advantage among women can give any party a huge advantage. And this is what has happened in West Bengal in favor of TMC. There are other factors also.
Okay.
If we compare it with 2019 election, Mamata Banerjee's party TMC trailed behind BJP among all the communities except for the Muslims. That's not has happened in 2021. Dalits have got divided more or less equally between TMC and BJP. And this applies to various other communities as well.
Okay. Very interesting. So you're saying that, I mean, that's why actually it's great to have you put the numbers to some of those, in a sense, anecdotal assumptions one has been making, that you do see an increased percentage of women voting over men across communities, and of course, Muslims overwhelmingly voting. But did you also find any numbers that suggest that some of these schemes, that there was some popularity, or that also was giving the government some traction?
Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. There is a lot of appraisal for the Trinamool government. If you look at any scheme, whether if we are talking even about say Bijli, Pani, Sadak, etc., so there is a positive appraisal of the government in terms of these deliverables. Also, if you talk about the schemes, lot of people, and when I say lot of people, about one scheme, say 20-25% people are willing to say, depend upon the scheme which was launched at which time.
Right.
A sizable number of people mentioned that they have benefited from the state government scheme.
Right.
The only 2 points on which people have been critical, one is employment opportunities, about which people still say employment opportunities have gone down, and the other point is about corruption. Large number of people ready to believe that there is a corruption in this government, but in spite of that, they voted for Mamata Banerjee.
Right. Nilanjan, I mean, it's interesting now, of course, we all, like, you know, pundits tend to do retrofit explanations to suit the outcome, but, you know, you've been also following this closely, you've traveled there. Why do you think so many of us, I mean, I have to count myself as amongst those, didn't quite see this coming, even though as so many indicators seem to suggest there was always this underlying kind of strength, support that she had? Sorry, Nilanjan, I think you muted yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're on, yes.
Okay. So I think Sanjay Kumarji actually hit many of the main points. And I think, you know, all of us started in Delhi and then went to Bengal. And I think when I walked into Bengal, I saw a very different picture. When you walked into the villages, you started seeing person after person who said, look, I've been a beneficiary of this scheme. I've been a beneficiary of that scheme. Mamata has been my protector. One of the big stories I remember, I heard from multiple people, is that during the lockdown, it was Mamata who saved, and it wasn't Modi. And I heard this over and over again. It's the first state I've been to, and I've traveled all over the country, as you know, where people didn't see Modi as the welfare sort of savior. They saw Mamata as the welfare savior. And that's a huge thing.
Right.
And so they basically made Modi a non-factor in this election. And once that happened, you know, the state level leadership for the BJP is just simply not that awe-inspiring for the average Bengali voter. The BJP was in a lot of trouble.
Okay. Interesting that it was actually Mamata being seen as a savior, not so much Modi. I think one of the things that she also did quite cleverly was aggressively push her own schemes to the disadvantage of the central schemes, because that's something the BJP is used very effectively, of schemes like PM Kisan and you know, and the insurance scheme Ayushman Bharat, and Mamata actually has tried to dilute that branding. But Debanshu Bhattacharya Dev, you are someone who's been very closely working with the youth, particularly. Explain that. I mean, there was such a strong sense that the BJP was giving a very tough fight, that they were about to win. But when you see the phase-wise data particularly, we'll try and put that graphic up on the screen. Actually, the BJP was never really ahead in the phases right from the beginning you were ahead. But did you have that same sense?
Absolutely. Can I talk in Hindi?
Yes, absolutely. Whatever you're comfortable in.
या देखिए, सबसे पहली तो बात है, मैं इससे पहले भी बहुत सारे इंटरव्यूज पे ये कह चुका हूँ कि ये बंगाल का अभी जो इलेक्शन टीएमसी लड़ने वाला है, ये टीएमसी का सबसे आसान मुकाबला होने वाला है। और मैंने एक्सप्लेन भी किया था क्यों। देखिए, हमने जब 2005 साल सरकार चलाने के बाद जब 2016 में हम लेफ्ट कांग्रेस के अलायंस के साथ लड़े थे, तब आपको ये याद रखना पड़ेगा कि लेफ्ट जो था वो 5 साल पहले सरकार से जा चुका था। इसका मतलब उनके खिलाफ वो एंटी इनकम्बेंसी नहीं था जो 2011 में था। यानी आप बोल सकते हैं कि वो कंपैरेटिवली फ्रेश पार्टी था। कांग्रेस उसके साथ अलायंस में था। वो कांग्रेस 1.5 साल पहले 2014 सेंट्रल से जा चुका था। लोग उसको नकार चुके थे। इसका मतलब उसके खिलाफ जो गुस्सा था वो लोग अपने जो आपका इलेक्शन है उसमें दे चुका था। यानी और बंगाल से तो कांग्रेस कब जा चुका है किसी को याद भी नहीं है। तो कांग्रेस भी कंपैरेटिवली फ्रेश पार्टी है। वो लेफ्ट और कांग्रेस के अलायंस के साथ टीएमसी का 5 साल का जो एंटी इनकम्बेंसी है, कुछ भी जो सरकार चलाने के बाद बनता है, उसका फाइट था। लेकिन अभी जो हम बीजेपी के साथ फाइट किए, सबने ये पॉइंट छोड़ ही दिया कि मान लीजिए टीएमसी का 10 साल का एंटी इनकम्बेंसी है, एक सरकार चलाने के बाद 1%, 2% या 80%, 50% जो जितना भी बोले होता है। लेकिन इस बार हमारा उस एंटी इनकम्बेंसी के साथ सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट का 6 साल का एंटी इनकम्बेंसी भी था। वो किसी ने काउंट नहीं किया। ये अगर आप बोले कि गैस का दाम 900 रुपया, ये हमारा माँ बहनी तो यूज करते हैं। सरसों का तेल 180 रुपया किलो। मोदी जी का जो आपका एसेंशियल कमोडिटीज का जो नया लॉ जो लोकसभा में किया गया है, उससे जो किया गया है उसके लिए ये जो भाव है ये पूरा देश में आज बढ़ चुका है। तो एक तरफ लोग देख रहे हैं कि दीदी का फ्री राशन का चावल हमको उबालना पड़ रहा है नरेंद्र मोदी का 900 रुपया का गैस में। तो यहां से जो चेंजेस हुआ वो बनना शुरू हुआ। ये तो पहली बात है। दूसरी बात, बंगाल का जनता डिफरेंशिएट कर सकते हैं। देखिए, ममता बनर्जी ने कन्याश्री, जुबश्री, सबूत छठी जो प्रॉमिस किया था 2011 से पहले, उन्होंने किया था। अब बीजेपी बंगाल में आने से पहले क्या बोला? मान लीजिए महिलाओं को लुभाने के लिए बोला हम फ्री बस में टिकट कर देंगे अगर आए। तो बंगाल का जनता, ये तो शातिर जनता है, तो जनता ने बीजेपी का लीडर्स लोगों से पूछा, भाई तुम बोल रहे हो कि बस में टिकट फ्री कर दोगे, पहली तो सवाल है तुम और स्टेट्स में हो, कहां पर एक जगह पर बस में फ्री कर दिए हो दिखाओ। केजरीवाल जी जब दिल्ली में करने के बाद कहा था महिलाओं के लिए बस फ्री, तो तुम लोगों ने विरोध किया था। और दूसरा जो बात, रेल तो तुम्हारे हाथ में है भाई, वो तो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के हाथ में नहीं है। अगर तुम बस को लड़कियों के लिए, महिलाओं के लिए फ्री करने की बात कर रहे हो, तो तुम ट्रेन क्यों नहीं किया? वो तो 6 साल
तो आप कह रहे हैं ओके, तो आप कह रहे हैं कि वो राइट, तो आप कह रहे हो कि हम ऑलवेज स्टेट गवर्नमेंट की एंटी इनकम्बेंसी बात कर रहे हैं। आप कह रहे हो कि सेंटर का भी एंटी इनकम्बेंसी था और वो वोटर उसको डिस्टिंग्विश कर पा रहा था।
एब्सोल्युटली। देखिए, एंटी इनकम्बेंसी अगर सेंट्रल के खिलाफ नहीं होता तो बीजेपी का वोट नहीं गिरता। अगर बीजेपी को 2019 में लोगों ने बंगाल के चेंज के लिए वोट दिया था, जो बीजेपी नेता ने बोल रहा था, मोदी का सरकार बनाने के लिए तो दिया ही था, उसके साथ बंगाल में भी चेंज के लिए अगर दिया था, तो उसका वोट 2-3% नहीं गिरता।
ओके, इंटरेस्टिंग पॉइंट. But at the same time, Chandra Bose, the fact is that the BJP has won 77 seats. So let's not diminish that. That's a huge jump. From 3 to 77 is a massive jump. And it's just that the BJP made it such a prestige battle that they sort of have now walked into this perception that there's been a debacle for them. But, you know, there was a kind of a fourth, I was talking about these 4 M's behind the Mamata win. There could have been a 5th M as well, which is the machinery, that is the party strength. And though the BJP did everything possible to build a huge ground network, it also mass purchased or mass migrated huge numbers of Trinamool leaders who presumably came with their own supporters. I think many people traveling across the state felt that it just did not manage to create that much of a machinery as the Trinamool has. Was that also a problem?
Well, we have congratulated the Trinamool Congress, and under the leadership of Mamata Banerjee, it's a landslide victory for them. But as you have already stated, that BJP has also done exceedingly well in the state of West Bengal. From 3 seats in 2016, we have gone up to 77. Yeah, we should have crossed 100. our expectation, at least my expectation, was crossing 125 seats.
Right.
Because we are in touch with the ground reality, with the booth level workers. So
Right.
that was our expectation.
Sure.
Now, I think, it is fair to gauge Mamata Banerjee from a different angle. I think we, to an extent, underestimated Mamata Banerjee's potential in West Bengal, because she has been a mass leader, she has been in politics. And one other advantage that she had, she could feel the pulse of the people. I think there is a lot of scope for retrospection on our side. And I think we should accept reality.
Right, that she has the pulse.
She has that advantage. I think we failed to connect with the people of West Bengal. Not only, you see, all communities. You see, Bengal, the society is somewhat different.
Yeah.
I, of course, don't want to compare it with any other state.
Yeah.
But here, I think inclusive politics is very important. You see, today we claim that Mamata Banerjee does appeasement politics. She does appeasement of the minority community.
Right.
But that necessarily doesn't mean that we do
majority
also appeasement of the majority community.
Okay, so you're saying that may not have worked, but okay.
That does not work.
Let me just one thing though.
Community would have given us an edge.
Okay, one thing I wanted to ask, and if it's possible, if we could just pull up some tweets by Gilles Vernier, who is the the political analyst, and who is at Ashoka University at the Trivedi Political Data Center there. These are a series of tweets he's done on whether the COVID factor had any effect on West Bengal, especially towards the last phases. And let me just ask Sanjay Kumar, while we pull up those tweets, whether at all that was something you looked at in your post-poll, and if that threw up anything at all.
No, we did not ask any question regarding to the COVID, but I don't think that there was any impact of COVID on the voting decision of the voters.
Okay.
See, if we are talking about did COVID make an impact or not, so the impact it could have made on two things. One, the turnout would have gone down, and second, whether the people shifted their vote, they wanted to vote for party A and they shifted their vote to party B.
Yes.
To say from BJP to Trinamool.
Trinamool, yes.
I don't see that happening. First, the turnout has not gone down drastically. A couple of percentages up and down, it always happens. So that's one indicator that COVID did not make any difference. When you look at the vote share of Trinamool Congress in different phases, you don't see much difference. Whatever is the difference, because in the last 7th and the 8th phase, Trinamool was bound to do well, because these are the areas where large number of Muslim voters are there. In the 8th phase, the 40%
yes.
of the all voters, 40% were Muslims, and in the 7th phase also, the Muslim concentration was up to the level of 36-37%.
Right.
So Trinamool was bound to do well in these two phases, which they did.
Okay,
so
that's actually what...
Ups and downs in the Trinamool vote is not an impact. It is not because of the COVID, but it's only because of the demographics.
Right, because that's broadly what Gilles was saying as well, that in the last 3 phases, that you do see a big dip in the BJP's vote share, and the Trinamool's vote share goes up compared to the other phases. But as you said, that could also be because it was a mix of the Muslim-dominated districts and Kolkata, which has traditionally been a Trinamool stronghold. But it is those last 3 phases where the virus was really making its presence felt. So were some voters, particularly in metro areas, swayed by it? It's hard to say. आपको क्या लगता है देवांशु जी, ये कोविड फैक्टर खासकर आखिरी फेज में इसका कुछ असर हुआ या नहीं?
देखिए, कोविड फैक्टर तो था, लेकिन वो सिर्फ आखिरी फेज में नहीं, वो पहले का फेज से था. लेकिन आप बोलेंगे कोविड तो मिड इलेक्शन में सेकेंड वेव आया, तो पहले से कैसे था? देखिए, पिछले साल का भी नरेंद्र मोदी सरकार का मिसमैनेजमेंट लोगों ने नहीं भूला. ये तो पहला वेव नहीं था, और वही कोविड के टाइम में दीदी का जो काम है, जो बहुत सारे सर्विस में भी निकल के आ रहा है. देखिए, पहली बात है, बंगाल में बहुत सारे माइग्रेंट वर्कर्स है. ये माइग्रेंट वर्कर को सिर्फ उत्तर प्रदेश और बिहार में जाने के लिए तकलीफ नहीं उठाना पड़ा, बंगाल में वापस आने के लिए भी तकलीफ उठाना पड़ा. लेकिन बंगाल में भी 2.5 लाख के ऊपर माइग्रेंट वर्कर रहता है जो दूसरे स्टेट से काम करने के लिए आता है. लेकिन आप एक भी सिनेरियो नहीं दिखा सकते कि बंगाल से माइग्रेंट वर्कर जाते हुए रेल लाइन पर मारे गए, स्टेशन पर मारे गए, ना खाए हुए मारे गए, क्योंकि दीदी
तो
ने
वो
उनके
भी
लिए
एक
शेल्टर
फैक्टर
बनाया
था।
था।
But
वो भी तो
interesting-
फैक्टर था, वो पहले फेज से ही फैक्टर था, क्योंकि लोगों को ये याद आ गया था जब दीदी चावल दे रहे थे तो स्टेट बीजेपी का लीडर लोगों को गौमूत्र खिला रहे थे। ये लोगों को याद आया।
ठीक है, चलिए, as I say, it's like unpeeling an onion, very complex, and we're still making sense of it. But anyway, we look forward to reading CSDS's analysis. I believe it's in the Hindu tomorrow. Is that right, Sanjay Kumar?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Professor.
From
So
tomorrow till 8.
tomorrow till, okay. So we'll have a series of your reports. Look forward to that. But thank you very much indeed for joining us out of time. And we'll have to leave it there. That's all the time on Reality Check. Good night.